Welcome back to the Business of Becoming. I'm your host, Stephanie, and I am very, very, very excited to have this new episode from this new year, 2026. I am very proud to say that we ended the year extremely strong and that we're starting this year still doing this podcast, and it's only getting better, it's only growing, and which is why today's topic is so important to me, because it is becoming her without the title, and why your identity is so much bigger than your job or any role that you really could attain. So this year, we're starting strong, talking about our identity first, because when you fix everything that's internal, it's just going to ooze out greatness, and your external is really going to shine, and you're just going to attract great things. I'm really excited to share it today because we're all trying to become somebody better. And if we start off January, just not even trying to just become somebody better, but just become whole and sound in who we really are, we're starting the year on the best note. So let's get into it. I know this is going to be the best year of my life thus far. And I hope it's going to be for you too. So let's start here. Today's episode is not about what you do. It's who you are when labels fade. Okay? It is not just a goal setting episode, because we will do that. I think that is very important. I've said it multiple times, but it's more of an identity setting episode. It's more of the framework. And I think it's very important to talk about that before we start talking about visions and goals and all that stuff, which we will get into. But this sets the tone for all of that and is the most important foundation you can have, which is knowing who you are before a title can identify that for you. So to get into it, we're going to start off with the first topic, which is title identity and why that is a crisis. So title identity is when you attach yourself to not just having a role, but being the role. And you no longer have your own identity, but your identity just becomes the role that you are. So basically, being a CEO, being a mom, being the team lead, whatever that role may be. It's just not giving room for who you genuinely are. Titles are extremely useful tools. They're very important in structure and organizing. In business, they're extremely important. However, they're dangerous as foundations for your identity. Why? Because if you do so, your confidence will rise or it'll fall with performance and with approval. And everything that you do is based around that title that you hold. So the real question is, what happens when that title is revoked or it's removed? Who are you? Let's put this into a perspective that you guys can understand. When your job is a role that defines you and then layoffs happen, right? Let's say you're a cop and you are super happy about being a cop. Sometimes many people take that as their complete identity, right? What about a relationship that you found yourself in and that was something that became a big part of your identity and then that ends? What about a platform that you have? Maybe you went viral, but then the algorithm changes. So all of these are real life scenarios of what it means to have a title identity. And again, none of them means that you failed. I'm not trying to hit that or make that point, let's just say. It just means that I really want to make you understand that those shouldn't define your identity. Now, they're good and useful to have titles. It's important, like I said before, but especially in a relationship, you want to have a title. You want to label that. Are you in it or you're not? But you don't want it to really give you your identity, okay? So let's go back a little bit now that we kind of understand. Titles are external. Titles are temporary. Titles can be removed by a system or a season in your life, or even by people, to be honest with you. And you don't want to base your identity off of a system. You don't want to base your identity off of a season in your life. Because at that point, when that season ends, or when that season is maybe not the best season of your life, you're going to base your identity off of that. And anything that can be given to you by a system can really be taken away by a season. And we've seen it happen all the time. People go into government, people go into different jobs and different roles, and you may be so proud of that position that you earned because you worked hard for it. But what if the government shuts down and now you no longer have a job? Does that mean that your identity now is just in a very unstable, unbalanced place? That could happen, which is, again, why it's so important that this year we focus on not chasing titles or chasing even seasons in our lives, but really just chasing what our true core identity is. There's a heavy emotional cost to having identity based off or tied to a title, right? You try to overwork, you try to overprotect it. You find yourself kind of in that place where it's not like, man, what Stephanie would do. What would I do? What would a disciplined leader do at this moment? You find yourself saying, what would a CEO do? Because now you tie yourself to that role and that identity becomes that role. So instead of operating the way that you would normally operate, right? Saying I'm disciplined, I'm hardworking, you start now, a CEO would, do this and do that. And it just becomes like an anxiety-based life. And we find ourselves in that rat race all the time. And it's not worth it. This year is not going to be the year where you find yourself in that cycle again. And that's why the real work is not adding more titles to you, but it's discovering who you really are when all the labels fall off and what is still true. So we're going to talk about these pillars of the core pillars of what I think your identity truly should be based off. All right, so there's 3 pillars of core identity that I have labeled out for myself. So these 3 core pillars are the leader, the provider, nurturer, and the believer. When I talk about these 3 pillars, it's not titles that I'm putting on myself. These are things that I believe stay true no matter what season in life you're in. And if you can have these things, these 3, identified and stay true, I think they would be a very good framework for understanding your identity in this season of your life. Let's start with the leader. It's not about being in charge, because I think every time somebody says leader, we think about us being, in elementary school and being like the line leader, being the first one. I don't think that's really what I use to identify me at my core. I feel like the leader is how I lead my life, what decisions I make for myself rather than having somebody else influence my decisions, how I hold boundaries, how I influence others. I think that's a big part of the leader, not just leadership. And also, it's being able to lead when you don't even have a team. And that's very important because you can't be a leader when you have a team or you have people to manage. You have to be a leader alone first, meaning you have to lead yourself before you can lead others. Because if not, then you're just kind of making up things on the fly, and a lot of those things are not going to really be consistent. They're just going to fall apart, and people will see through it. Trust me. I know a crappy leader from a mile away, and I know when someone doesn't know what the hell they're talking about and are just a leader because of a title, not because of genuinely who they are. Leadership does not require a title. I think leadership is all about responsibility. And examples of you leading is when you choose discipline over chaos. And trust me, I've been dealing with that a lot. It's making sure you lean into the right thing rather than the wrong thing. It's being able to make decisions for yourself, set boundaries for yourself, and not ask for permission to set the right tone for your life. The second pillar is the provider / the nurturer. So it's your ability to be consistent, your ability to provide safety, and whether that's also financial safety or just emotional safety for someone. And I think that's very important, especially in my life as a mom. I have to create a safe environment for my kids and a safe environment too for my team, right? So that they feel like they can talk to me and express what's going on at work. So it's not just financial. I think that is also very important, and that's a big core. But it is definitely having the emotional intelligence to handle certain situations in your life that can come like a wrecking ball and be able to still be someone who is providing that emotional safety, providing that consistent love language to those around you and to yourself. And this pillar really shines when things fluctuate, when seasons change, when situations change, when relationship statuses change. You have to find that inner true pillar of who am I as a nurturer and as a provider? And can I continue providing this emotional safety, this ground, sense of compassion and empathy of who I am, even when things are not as they were, or even when things are not as happy and dandy and butterfly as they should be. I think that in its core is such a amazing thing to have as understanding what your identity is and how you can identify that in your life. The third pillar for me is the believer. It's my faith. It's my morals. It's my values. And this one and specifically reminds me, who I truly am at the core and who I truly respond to at the end of the day. To me, it is so much more than religion and performance. To be someone religious, I think it's just someone who at their core, like I said, really just knows who they're responding to at the end of the day. And I can go back to this pillar of my identity, of who I am, when things are shaky, when things are tough, when things don't have a real sense of understanding for me. And that happens so much in life, especially in this last year. But being able to know that that's a pillar, core value of who I am, it genuinely helps me not lose myself when I'm in survival mode. It helps me really not let myself compromise those boundaries that I set place for myself. And most importantly, it allows me not to measure my worth by the outcomes that happen. And I think that's such a vital thing for us as individuals. We did that so much, especially towards the end of the year. Like I was mentioning before, we do that so much trying to measure, what our worth is and what did we do. And when you have this core pillar of believing, at least in something, for me, it's my faith, and it allows me not to waver, even if I feel like it was not the greatest year, but it allows me not to waver. And I had this conversation not too long ago with someone, just saying, man, like this year, I just genuinely felt like God wanted me to just rely more on Him and trust more on Him and set my plan aside. And being able to go back into knowing that I have someone else to respond to is such a safe place to be, because I can tell you how crazy your identity can shift back and forth within it. Man, so much can change in a year. Like, so much can change. And this time last year, I was a completely different person. This time 2 years ago, I was a completely different person. But my belief and my core value, my core beliefs, the core foundation of who I am, that hasn't changed. It's been tested, but it hasn't changed. I still believe that God has the best plans for me. I still believe that I am meant for greatness. I still believe that I do carry influence. I still believe that I know my boundaries. I know my morals. I know my convictions. That has not changed in the last 2 years. And I know that that's such a pillar of real identity. And I'm trying to explain that to you guys, because even though so much has changed within these 2 years, I still know where I'm headed. I could taken a couple detours in the last few years, but I still know where I'm headed. I still know that there's something much greater out there planned for me. And I have my plans, and I've presented them to God, and He can intervene as He has in these last few years and pivoted me. But I still know where I'm heading. All right, so why are these my non-negotiables? These 3 pillars are my non-negotiable because honestly, a job can end, a relationship can end, a title can change, but these 3 things can't. They can't be taken away from you by a system or a season. These 3 things are pivotal to who you are as a human. And lastly, we're going to talk about leading from the core. So what does that mean? The core pillars that I was talking about earlier, you want to lead from that. You don't want to lead from any emotional state that you may be in, because then you're going to make emotional decisions. And you're going to be a reactive person rather than a proactive person. Most people lead from the outside in. So they lead from a place of, what does my role expect? What would people think? Especially, what would keep my image intact? And in reality, we don't want to live our lives leading from outside in. We want to lead our lives from leading from in outward. And leading from the core flips that completely, because it starts, answering the questions of, does this align with my values? Does this align with my beliefs? Is this the best decision for the future that I have set out for myself? And even in business, it goes back to not answering like, what would a CEO need to do to lead these people? It goes back to, what would a disciplined leader teach my team right now? So to wrap this up, titles are what you do, and your identity is who you are. So this year we're becoming better individuals, but we're also building who we are rather than the titles that come with it. I would love for all of you listeners to write down at least 3 words to describe your identity. And I don't want them to be title-based. I would love for you guys to use examples like, grounded, disciplined, motivational, whatever that may look like. And I would love for us to start the new year with this mindset, to really identify that we're not title-based identity people, and understanding the 3 pillars of identity in our lives, and understanding how to lead from those 3 core pillars. This wraps up the first episode of the year, and I genuinely am so excited for what is to come on Business of Becoming. This year we have so many cool things that we have planned out, and I'm just very excited to have you guys witness it with me, grow with me. We're at like 266 or 67 subscribers, and it's just getting better and better, and it's getting fun. Every single time I sit in this chair, it's getting better. So I'm excited to share with you guys in the near future all the really fun things we're going to be doing. And don't forget to like and subscribe. You guys have been amazing to me last year, and this year I know that we're going to be having a lot of fun together. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. It was one for the books for sure. Becoming her without the titles, I think it's just a freaking power move. And if we can really set our tone for this year on having our identity really be based off of our core values rather than any title, you're going to rule the world. So I hope to see you guys in the next one. And let's start this year off amazing. I'll see you guys on the chair next year. Well, I'll see you guys on the chair next week.